for a lot of people, particularly in our generation, he was a symbol of their childhood. You grew up with that guy. You grew up with him being a constant. I think that's the thing that bothered me personally the most, was that he felt almost like one of those constants in life and show business sort of thing.
It was like 4 hours later that I found out that it was suicide, and there was definitely another drop in how bad it felt or how heavy it is. And that, brings about a lot of questions of like, why? What are they longing for? What is it that's missing from the equation when a person that amazing doesn't want to be a part of it anymore?
The one thing that came out of his death, was so many stories about how great he was to other people. And it's just, if he could have turned that back on himself, maybe he'd still be here.
I think the fact that he had died this way opened up conversations that we aren't having. And we say that, like mental illness, we should all talk about it, but we don't really. We talk about it in other people, but we don't talk about it in our own families.
I think the conversation starts and is unfortunately not kept going. I think that we kind of stop talking about it after a while. The initial buzz of it hits us, and then we go, okay, we move on to something else. There's too many things going on for us to focus on. And so when you see someone at work who might be depressed or something, you don't think to them, hey, even Ron Williams, who looked like super happy and was like always, he was depressed. Maybe Steve, who works in IT, is actually depressed.
There are times where you're just like, you can't believe what your brain is saying to you. Like, you can't believe that your brain is telling you that you shouldn't exist anymore. And then, but in your, like, deep down, that that's wrong. But it just affects everybody. It doesn't matter how successful you are or how poor or rich you are. People's brains just mess with them, and it's scary and terrible. And I think that it's just the biggest way to get over that kind of thing is to talk about it.
Whether mental health issues are more prevalent in comedy, I couldn't say, because we talk about it so much. We talk about every aspect of our lives, so I think it seems like it's more prevalent, but I would bet that there's a lot of accountants that are not always in their right mind, but they just doesn't show up in the numbers. Like, their bosses go, oh, your numbers clearly show that you have social anxiety issues, where it's very common for comedians to talk about that stuff, because that's what's going to be funny, because it's true and interesting.
There's that old saying that, like, stand-up comedy, it's cheaper than therapy. It's true. Therapy is very expensive, and stand-up is free. I mean, it just costs time and self-esteem.
I think comedy is therapeutic. I don't like to think of people using it as that exclusively, because I think it accomplishes so many other things, and I think it can be really cathartic for the comedian and for the artist, particularly when the comedian is willing to share personal things. And I found for myself, when I share personal things, if I notice or if I see the audience member connecting with that, that can be really eye-opening to me, when I think like, oh, of course.
Like, you can be funny, but where are you going to get that, like, deep, heavy patina of 20 years of misery that comes with the great stand-up comics? Being an outsider is what it's about. And, often people with mental illness or people with problems, they often end up as outsiders. And we're lucky enough that most of the comics are lucky enough that we found a place that we can channel that into a relatively positive thing.
Even if you have, like, one person that you can call all the time, if you're having, like, a really bad day, or you've thought some things that are insane, it's really good to just have somebody that you can talk to about it.
If that person might be a little bit suffering, you get the feeling, they're not good, say, you know what, man, I just don't feel great, and I'm just a little down sometimes, and then open that conversation, because maybe that will give them just that little bit hand out of the mud. Because I've been down at the bottom of that hole, and I know what it's like, and you don't think you can get out, but sometimes someone just pointing a light down to you or handing you a rope will make a big, big difference. So there's an honesty that really has to come from it. We have to stop pretending, it's like if you had a broken leg, you wouldn't walk around on it and not get a cast. You'd get a cast and get it fixed. So if you're sick, if you need help, it's not your fault, but it's your problem, and you need to get help. And hopefully we'll be there and help those people.